Hey everyone, on this episode of Inside the Mind, a podcast about athletes, I have Tanner Emerson, who's a former hockey goalie and a current hockey coach. And I think being a former hockey goalie, he had a lot of different experiences when it came to the game than somebody like I did who has never played goalie before. I think there's a lot of unique mental perspectives to the game as a goalie. Won't spoil too much of it, so roll the intro. It's one thing to learn about things, obviously, in a lecture or a classroom, but to actually be involved with it and do it, I feel like is the best way to learn.
Oh, absolutely. Like being able to apply the school materials is really interesting, especially since they're so young. Like being able to get them to be motivated and to set goals throughout games and stuff like that, and just apply what I'm learning in class at the exact same time as I'm learning it in class is kind of neat.
Yeah.
It's
Is being sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. But yeah, it's great. Like you said, like I didn't even know that the opportunity existed until our friend Taylor mentioned it to me.
Yeah.
So I got to take advantage of that, and it's been really nice.
Nice. Is a hockey coach or something in the coaching world like your end goal after your education and everything, or is there another path you're looking to take?
For the most part, it's something I've been thinking about a lot. It's something I thought about when I played too. So it's definitely an option for me that I'm looking to explore when I'm done. And if not, I'd like to become a mental performance consultant and just be able to work with athletes. That's sort of the end goal for me, at least.
Right. 'Cause I know we talked a bit before, and you mentioned that I listened to your other podcast with Taylor, but you were a goalie growing up, and I've never been a goalie myself, and I always kind of figured that goalies see the game a little bit differently than other hockey players, in the sense like mentally it's just a whole different part of the game. I don't know how true this is, but I always kind of thought that as a goalie you're never really like taking time off or anything in the middle of a game. Like as a player, you can come off the ice and you sit for a couple minutes and you go back out for your shift. But as a goalie, you're on the ice for the whole game, right?
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Like you're in the playing service for the full 60 minutes when you're playing as a goaltender. And like you said, it's very mental. You don't get the chance to go to the bench after a bad shift or like somebody get me off the ice, like that type of deal. Like you have to be in the environment and still be able to reset if you have an issue.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the luxury that players have that they don't really know they have until they strap on the pads and try a game.
So much so, even like you see it, in hockey games on TV or whatever, when a player comes back from the shift or sitting on the bench and the coach is able to talk to them, and you have your assistant coach, your head coach, or whatever coach may be that comes and talks to you, maybe gives you some advice or helps you reset, like you said. But as a goalie, unless it's a media timeout or in between periods, you don't really have that chance either. So you almost have to be a little bit of your own coach when you're on the ice.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have to be very analytical of yourself. Have to know your body. Like you said, you don't really have the luxury of having a coach out there with you all the time to be able to harp in your ear when something's going wrong or you make a mistake. So you have to be able to recognize the issues yourself and be able to take care of them yourself as well. So that's sort of what makes us unique.
Yeah. Were you always planning on being a hockey goalie, or did it just kind of come about?
I was, yeah. It was something I always wanted to do, and ever since I was about 3 years old, and I sat in front of the TV and watched Hockey Night in Canada with my dad and saw Curtis Joseph play for the Leafs. So it's something that that's something that I was always interested in. I see the saves, I see the gear, and it just drew my attention always. So it's something I always wanted to do.
Yeah,
really glad I got to do it.
I mean, growing up, I was like a huge Curtis Joseph fan as well, and I had some thoughts growing up. Like I had some, I had some desire to be a goalie, but I could never really get over the fear of having pucks shot at me. I don't know why. And I don't know how exactly some goalies get over that fear. I mean, when I think about it now, like the shots that I would have faced at, 10 or 11 years old would be nothing compared to, 16 or 17. And then again, in your 20s or 30s. But that was just something that I never could really get over. Did you have any of those same struggles, or did you even think about that, like just the fear of pucks coming at you?
There's definitely a fear of some guys' shots, but with time, you slowly progress and you slowly get used to it, and you realize that your gear's there to protect you, not to like just to be there.
Yeah.
So like every now and then you do feel a stinger, and that's just sort of something you have to accept with the role of being the
Yeah.
goaltender on the team. But I mean, the more shots you face and the harder shots you face, it begins to kind of eliminate that fear as you start to stop them and realize that, hey, like that didn't hurt.
Yeah.
So it's sort of facing your fears in a sense. So
Yeah. I would assume, like, looking back on it, the way I could have probably gone about it is just take almost like a step by step approach into, not being fearful of the shots. Kind of start with something small, a small fear that's related to goalie, or whatever it may be, like a soft shot or something, and then slowly work my way up. Like if I was practicing like with my buddies or something. But I would have been a terrible goal anyways, because every shot that came at me, I would close my eyes. And I don't know, I was
yeah.
probably the only. I don't know if other goalies do that or if that's something that goalies do when they begin. But that was like, I couldn't just, if I knew everything about sports psychology and just, reset routines and kind of facing your fears that I knew now, maybe, my hockey career would have been a bit different. I would have been a goalie, but that was a fear that I never got over. Just always close my eyes whenever a shot came in, and it's pretty hard to shoot a puck, or to save a puck if you're not looking at it.
Exactly. That's the main thing, is being able to focus on just the puck and not the player sometimes,
Yeah.
Some guys get mixed up when they're tracking it, but I was at the time when I was a really young kid, I was known as a flincher. So when the puck would come, I'd sort of tighten up and flinch a bit, and then that would
Mm.
delay my reaction time. And so it came off like I was scared of the puck, which in a sense was true.
Mm.
And eventually over time, when I started facing better players and harder shots and started facing more and more pucks, especially in the summertime when I got more and more skates in, it slowly started to go away. And with that, I started to progress and become better and better and more
Yeah.
comfortable in net.
Was there any like specific mental exercise or something along the lines that you did to help you, not flinch as much, or was it just kind of something that just came with more exposure to different shots?
I can't think of anything really specific. Of course, I was like 10, 12 at the time, so I didn't really know
Mm-hmm.
that would be more psychology than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have been just more exposure to it. It could have been just getting hit by a really hard shot and not being hurt, and just sort of building the self-efficacy of like, hey, like that didn't hurt. This is a hard shot. Like that came really fast.
Mm-hmm.
This was fine. And so it could be a stem from that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was younger, I skated with a couple friends who were dads, played in the NHL, and every now and then they'd shoot a puck at you, and you're like, holy, like that came in really fast. Like
Yeah.
that's an NHL player right there. Like I just made that save. Like my shoulder may turn purple next week, but like I just made that save.
Right.
And so like it's sort of building the self-efficacy of, hey, I like that wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you start looking at the puck differently,
Yeah. Did you do you remember any of the names of the guys that were in the league that you took shots against back then?
I do. It started out with Brad May. I
Okay.
was out with him and his son. It was a couple years from his Anaheim years. And Tyler was a really good player. He's actually a very good golfer as well. And I believe he decided to pursue that instead.
Mm.
And then I was out with Steve Steos.
I think he's from
About a
Hamilton
couple
too.
weeks later. Yeah, he's a Hamilton boy.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
president and GM of the Bulldogs. And that's where I met Michael Anlauer as well, the owner of the Bulldogs.
Okay.
It was kind of neat. And then Paul Coffey after that, and Wendell Clark as well.
Yeah.
So
I
it
mean,
was
if you're gonna pick a couple guys to take shots from, that's not a bad selection at all.
no, not at all. Not at all. I was very fortunate that my dad worked at the rink and was willing to volunteer all my hours to dodging pucks in the summertime, for sure. And being very lucky to live in Muskoka as well, where a lot of the big names tend to cottage. So
Yeah, yeah. Especially, the Muskoka Five, as they were famously called, 10 years ago for the Leafs. That seems like all the hockey players they have some sort of residence. If you play for Toronto, you got something up in Muskoka or up that way. So that's a good place to be. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you hear the stories and you're like, who was up here this week? Oh, nice.
I
Nice.
know. I know. One thing, that's obviously knowing that you're a Leafs fan that I kind of wanted to ask you about was the big news, I guess, this week was Freddie Anderson playing back-to-back games as a goalie. For those who aren't familiar with who Freddie Anderson is, a goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it's not typical when an NHL team has games on back-to-back nights for the goalie to play both games. And I was kind of thinking to myself, I wasn't sure if it was more of a physical thing or a mental thing. If you had maybe any more insight on that, because I have to think that like if you're an NHL goalie, you're in pretty elite shape. It's hard to get to that level without having some sort of athletic performance that's built into you. So I wasn't sure if playing back-to-back nights for a goalie, if that's so frowned upon just to let them rest physically, or is it to let them rest mentally, or is it both, a combination?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
I know personally for me, like it would be a bit of a drag to play 2 games in a row, back-to-back nights on a weekend. I've done it before. It wasn't. I wouldn't personally fully recommend it as much as I love playing, especially at the NHL level when you're facing that many shots, and especially if you're playing for a poor team where you get a ton of shots. But I do also think about how that's slowly becoming the norm for goalies, is kind of controlling their load. It's like load management. It's almost like what the Raptors did with Kawhi Leonard as well,
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep a good player like rested, and especially Freddie, because he's such an integral part of their team. When he's rolling, the Leafs are rolling, and it's kind of nice because if they falter, he holds them up. And they're just struggling with their backup situation this year for some reason. And so to get a chance to win, it's kind of nice to have the guy who's rolling in net both nights. But I remember, like, back to my summer skates, I was skating with this one kid, and his dad kept saying, the more tired you get, the more focus you have to apply to what you're doing. And that really resonated with me. It was just like, you need to keep a sharp mind, even if your body's not as sharp as what it would be. And that was sort of something how I used to approach like back-to-back games and stuff like that, was just, hey, like I may be tired, but the little black thing on the ice is still going to come for me. So I still got to be able to put my body in front of it. And I still got to make right decisions. So I may be tired, but I need to make smarter decisions now. So my mind needs to be sharp.
Yeah, it's such a different way of looking at a goalie, the whole load management thing. I always think back to Martin Brodeur when he was playing for the Devils, and he would play. He played like maybe.
It'd be nothing to see him play 73 games a year.
Right. Yeah, he did that. Maybe probably about up to 10 years in a row. He played at least 70 games for them, and it's just so crazy to think about it. I think it just really speaks to just the shift in in athletic performance and athletic training, and seeing how to get the best out of your players is the recognition of the mental part of the game. It's not just a goalie can, of course, or any athlete can be physically tired, but mentally there, or they could be physically there but mentally tired. But I think it's just been a shift recently in recognizing that there's load management for the physical part of the game as well as the mental part of the game. So even though you have an elite athlete like Freddie, he might not necessarily be tired and would physically be able to play back-to-back games, but the mental things he has to go to in order to stop 50 shots on back-to-back nights. I hope he never has to do that, but It really just speaks to, I think, the shift in what coaches are looking out for their players in order for them to be in the best shape possible.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, at the time, Johan Hedberg had the best job in the league for the Devils.
Right.
You make a couple million, you watch Marty play 73 games, and you get front row seats, and you still get to play. So it wasn't a bad gig for him at the time, but it's definitely important to manage people and manage their minds, because I mean, when athletes get overtired, that's when injuries happen, and then when you lose your main guy, it makes the team's efforts like a lot more difficult in the long stretch. And so it's all about injury prevention as well, which is nice, and as well as managing their fitness levels and fatigue.
Yeah.
And things like that.
Yeah, I know you mentioned a bit about how the Leafs are going through a rough backup situation. And maybe for those that aren't too familiar with it, the Leafs backup goalie, well, I mean, they had two backup goalies this year, but I think they were combined 0-6-1. So they haven't won a game yet this year when their backup goalie is in. And it kind of got me thinking as well that the goalie position is in a unique scenario. It's almost like the quarterback in the NFL, or maybe even like the pitcher in baseball, where when the team loses, they tend to get more share of the blame than the other players of the team, right? Because I think maybe there's just one goalie to focus on versus 18 skaters or whatever it may be that's actually on the ice. So I don't know if you've had to go through anything like that where your team's been on a losing streak and you felt maybe more pressure than usual that it's on you, or how you would feel like, or how you would think goalies kind of get out of that mindset when they feel like they have all the pressure on themselves.
Yeah, I remember there was a lot of times where one simple move, and I'm the most loved guy in the room, and one simple move and guys weren't talking to me,
Mm-hmm.
getting undressed after the game. So it's definitely can be a tough spot. I remember one of my years in juniors, we were in a pretty big skid, and I was taking it, you just kind of take it personally because after, a couple shots go by, you like, you're starting to get in your head, you're like, my numbers, like what is going on here? I'm still not winning games. Like, are my teammates giving up on me? Or am I just giving this up myself? And you kind of take it upon yourself to like just sort of to make things happen, to get momentum boost for the team. So you start looking for that big save to get the boys up, or you're just looking to stop every shot just so you can keep it close. It's so just the way you react to it is totally different based on the game scenario. But at the end of the day, you still take it personally because you're just so used to it. You do get the finger pointed at you a little bit because you are the one guy, like you're the last line of defense. And so when you make a mistake, everybody sees it.
Right.
Whereas when forwards, they put a pass in somebody's feet, it's easy to, bounce back from that, or to remake the situation. You kick the puck up to your skate.
Right.
That's fine. Whereas like if I have a puck and it goes off my shoulder and it bounces up in the air and it bounces behind me, everybody's watching that. Everybody sees it. There's no place to hide.
Right.
But if you miss a pass or miss an assignment, it's a bit easier to get lost in transition. So
yeah, I know,
that's
because
where we differ.
When you kind of think about it, if a forward or a defenseman makes a mistake, it doesn't directly lead to the goal in the sense that a forward misplacing a pass doesn't translate to a goal to the other team in a sense. They still have to come down and shoot the puck. Whereas when a goalie makes a mistake, it's directly leads to a goal. So it's I feel like the goalies they kind of get a lot of praise or they get a lot of slack for their performance, and there's no real middle ground. I feel like you either all-star in the team or one of the guys that are holding it down.
Well, I completely agree. We get way too much credit and we get way too little credit sometimes, as Braden Holtby once said. It's pretty funny. Yeah. And not only that, but like when you're making saves, sometimes you're covering up a lot of mistakes for other guys too. So not only are you trying to eliminate your mistakes, you're trying to like cover up for other guys too. So, and that's something that a lot of people don't think about, is that how a mistake in the neutral zone or even the offensive zone kind of leads up to a shot on your own net. And that's something that I preach to the goalies that I coach as well, is like, hey, like this happened and it turned into a shot on net. So you may have missed the shot, like, okay, you may have missed the third rebound, but at the same time, there's a guy up front who got 3 whacks at you.
Yeah.
So you need to, not put that on yourself. You need to go and just relax and reset and not worry about that goal.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, just as much as you have a job to stop the puck, somebody else has a job to cover that guy. And so you need to learn how to not take it so personally and just kind of, as people would say, shrug it off.
It's tough too. I was just kind of thinking about it now that one of the consistent themes that I hear about in sports psychology literature and just sports psychology practice is focusing on the process and not the outcome. So don't focus on goals, assists, points, whatever it may be, but focus on the things you actually do on the ice, and that's how you kind of stay in the right mental frame of mind. I feel like, for players, it's a little easier than goalies because I'm thinking about kind of, some advanced stats that have come out recently for players like Corsi, and all those advanced analytics that kind of focus more on the process than the outcome. For goalies, I'm not really aware of many stats like that. I feel like it's more of an outcome driven position rather than a process driven position. I don't know if you had those same feelings or not, and maybe, what advice or coaching techniques can you personally call upon or that you help other goalies with to maybe help them focus on the process and not the outcome, or if there's just certain phrases that you tell them or whatever it may be.
Yeah, as far as advanced analytics go, I like 5-on-5 save percentage is very important to me
Mm.
because you can have a team that just struggles with a penalty kill, or you can be a slump in your penalty kill and kind of get power play goals blown by you left, right, and center. But when the
Hmm.
team's at 5-on-5, like you're lights out, just
Hmm.
because there's not that extra guy who's sitting all alone without somebody covering them.
Hmm.
And so, like, that's kind of the weird thing about special teams, that they allow opportunities that normal play does not. And so, yeah, I always have to be thinking about that too. But as far as process goes, one thing I always told myself was just to keep it simple. Don't get too worked up. Don't look for big saves. Just work on focusing on the next shot. Just take it one shot at a time. And I remember when I was in slumps and juniors, I'd start to kind of look at the shot clock a little bit, and I'd be like, okay, like if I saw 5 more shots, I'm at a 900. I'm not in an 860. Like I don't look as bad, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, like a dump in comes in. I'm trying to get my stick on it just to see that tick marker go up like 1 or 2 more. Like
Hmm.
I'm like reaching for stuff that's going to miss the crease just so I can get my save percentage up to save my numbers.
Hmm.
And so one thing when I realized that, I realized that it was really hurting myself too, because I'm just more focused on external motivation and just improving myself rather than helping the team. So one thing I tried to do was just take it one shot at a time and start focusing on, am I keeping the team in the game? Am I giving us a chance?
Hmm.
Like I'm not worried about my outcome. I want to know if we're going to be a team that loses, I want to make sure that we lose by 1 and we have a chance to win that game. And I don't want to be the reason that we lost. So that was sort of my thing, was just one shot at a time and just play for my teammates.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of seems like taking it one shot at a time is almost kind of how do I say this? An extension of like a reset routine, where that like you fierce a shot, you save it, kind of reset a bit, wait for the next one. Um, I don't know if you feel the same way a bit. I know the reset routine's a little bit, sometimes it can be used a little bit differently, but that's kind of something that sparked my mind. And I think the reset routine is such an important tool, not only for goalies, but for athletes in general. Um, Not only as a way to just like, facing things one at a time and not getting caught up in the moment, but again, when something doesn't go your way, to kind of reset, get back at, a baseline arousal or energy level, and then, just get ready for the next play.
Exactly. And I view it as like short-term goals as well. So when you think, okay, game starting, I got to stop that first one. You make that first save of the game, you feel really good about yourself. And it's like, okay, let's stop the next one. So it's just a bunch. It's just a compilation of many, many different little short-term goals that can be accomplished within split seconds.
Hmm.
And that just kind of builds you up throughout the game. And if that keeps building up, you start, you do feel a bit of anxiety, like you said, and you do end up capturing that flow state, even if you weren't already in it. And it kind of helps, just a little bit of a pickup, just to see those get knocked off one by one.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch on, knowing that you grew up playing in the GMHL, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the GMHL is different than all the other junior leagues in Canada in that um, it accepts foreign players. I'm not sure if there's any other leagues at that level that accepts foreign players.
In Canada, there isn't,
Okay.
aside from the OHL and the CHL in general, which is
Yeah.
a completely different scenario.
Yeah.
So like you said, like that was kind of my main defense of the league when I played there, was that was our big difference between us and any quote unquote Hockey Canada sanctioned league,
Uh-huh.
was that we allowed the European players to come play, and we were the first league to implement the pay to play system. where
Oh, okay.
players would pay the annual fee to the team, and that would be like their quote unquote tuition
Right.
for the year, and then that would allow them to play. And
Right.
so before, owners would be losing money owning teams and just letting players play for free and covering bill costs and stuff like that. But then they see the way our league was operating, and they saw that guys were actually making money off of it, and all of a sudden a little light bulb goes off, and now everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
But the quality of players is pretty good. Like if you're on
Yeah.
a good team, you're playing really good hockey. That's for
Yeah.
sure. I know we moved quite a few players onto minor pro from our league, so
Mhm.
can speak highly of it for sure.
How much of a factor was it, or didn't even cross your mind, or what were the challenges with sharing the dressing room with guys from foreign countries? Not in the sense that like they're from a foreign country, but any sort of like language barriers or cultural differences. Was it hard at the beginning to kind of have a high level of team chemistry with guys from out of the country, or was it kind of the case that we're all here to play some puck and let's do it?
It was definitely difficult. I mean, you have some guys who are from the middle of Russia who can't speak a lick of English, and they have to rely on their other guy who they just met to be their translator. And so, like at the start, it becomes it's a little awkward for guys really who can't really speak English or come over to speak English, or you can't speak Russian or Czech or anything like that. So it makes it tough, but when you kind of learn together each other's language, you learn about each other's cultures, it kind of brings the room together a bit, and you're all there to play hockey, so you all have obviously something in common. And a lot of these guys, they've heard of North American hockey, they've heard of the NHL, and so you kind of bond through that. And then when you're in the room, you try to implement a system where everybody speaks a common language, or at least tries to, and that kind of helps bring the team together at the start. And then through the various road trips and everything like that, you just sit with different people on the bus, you get to talk to them, you learn about their hometowns, you learn what they do, about their families. Like we had one kid on our team, his family would make guns, and we had another kid whose family would like, he was like the equivalent of Mr. Christie's cookies.
Right.
So you learn about all sorts of different people. And one kid, his family owned a coffee shop in France. So you learn about all different types of people, and it's really neat. And like if you actually take an interest in somebody, they're gonna like you a lot more for that. And that was
Mhm.
sort of my mentality to it, was that like, hey, like I'm with these guys for 7 months. Why not try to learn as much as I can about not only their culture but them, and just try to like create a friendship and just create a bond, because if not, it's gonna be a long 6 months in that locker room.
Yeah.
And they're gonna be talking about you in a language you don't know. So
Right.
so you might as well try to make it as positive as you can, right?
Yeah. And I think, keeping things as positive as you can in the locker room, and the whole, taking an interest in other players, especially when they're new, and just, having, that kind of team chemistry, I think is such an underappreciated part of the game, especially for hockey. Because I think of, just even last year, for example, in the NHL, where the Blue Jackets, they came in as a wild card team, they knock off the best team in the league, and the Islanders, who had just lost John Tavares, they come in and they finish, I believe second in their division. There's so many instances in hockey where teams that are less talented on paper end up knocking more talented teams out of the playoffs. I think part of it is due to coaching systems and whatnot, but I think part of it too is just when you have, you know, 23 skaters, I think that's the NHL roster size, but 23 or 22 skaters that play for each other, I think that's something special that you can't really quantify, but it makes the biggest difference in the world and could push teams, to help them overachieve in a sense on what their paper talent level says they can do.
No, I completely agree. Having team chemistry is definitely as important as having a good system in place in my mind.
Mhm.
Because you can have all the talent in the world if you guys don't get along with anything.
Mhm.
If you're fighting on the bench, you're bickering on the bench, you're yelling at guys because they shot instead of making that pass because you had an easy tap in backdoor. Like it kind of breaks apart a team. But I remember my third year I was playing for the Omegan Spartans, and we ended up going to Final Three that year. The way the league worked was we had three divisions, and the winners of each division went to the final round, and they played like a round robin tournament to play for the cup. It was kind of a mess, but it was
Bit
really
like the
interesting.
Memorial Cup.
Yeah, it was basically like that. So I was with the Omegan Spartans, and like on paper, we weren't as stacked as Tottenham or Kingsville were at the time, but we had a team that was willing to literally just go to war and die for each other. Like we were such a tight knit group, like it was unbelievable. And I was a late addition to that team.
Mm.
And I walk into that room, and the first thing I noticed is just how close everybody was. And we had a team that, yeah, we had a couple guys who had 170 to 80 point seasons, but at the same time, like just the bond we had was like incomparable.
Mm.
Like, I mean, it's been, I'd say 6 years since that team, and we still fire up that group chat every now and then,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody talks about how much we miss each other. Like it was really incredible just to see like how a team that really like on paper probably shouldn't have gone as far as we did ended up going that far and still put up a really good fight against the teams that had way more talent than us.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we were willing to put in that work and we were willing to do whatever it took to win, because we didn't care who got that winning goal. We just wanted to win.
Mm-hmm. As a goalie, just thinking about team chemistry, were there any parts where you maybe felt a little left out on the team, or maybe a little bit more lonely, just because you're not able to sit on the bench with the guys? You're kind of in your crease the whole game, and sometimes you may look over the bench and you see guys chatting up or not. Did that ever cross your mind at all, or not really?
Yeah, there's some games where I started where I felt left out. I know I was a backup long enough that I got enough time on the bench, so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't miss it as much. But there are definitely some times where you look over at the bench and you see all your teammates like chatting about stuff or whatever. But it is a lonely position. But at the end of the day, like you still go into the locker room, you still chat with everybody, so that's kind of nice. That's sort of what you look forward to. And then when you get the tap of the pads, like after save, like you know that everybody's there and everybody's still thinking about you. Like you don't, you're not on Gilligan's Island per se.
Right.
You do have a chance to reunite with them. So.
And that tap on the pads, I mean, it's such a small gesture, but it can mean the world to a goalie. Kind of similar to like how a coach, pass the back of a player's back when they're sitting on the bench or something, say, good play. That's something like that. I got to feel like it just means the world to a goalie when you know that your guys are there and they got your back and they see the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Getting the approval from your teammates is definitely huge. Good game or bad. You make a great save, everybody's there for you. Like it definitely picks you up, and you let in a bad goal and everybody's there for you. I remember my first goal in the playoffs was from center ice. So having the boys there to give me that tap on the pads made me feel a lot better, because I was 17 and super nervous about playing my first playoff game. And next thing you know, right off the opening draw, guy walks in, chips it from center ice. It's an easy breadbasket catch in the chest, and I miss it through my armpit.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of an embarrassing moment, but having my teammates there to help pick me up and get back to speed was nice.
Yeah.
It's definitely uplifting.
When you think about reset routines, that's probably at the top of the list for a team. For times that were needed.
Yeah. I remember we were talking about it afterwards, and I heard about my owner, but the owner of the team was sitting in the press box, and the other owner went to the bathroom, and he comes back and he hears cheers and he goes, "What happened? I missed it." And next thing you know, he's like, "Oh yeah, so did Tanner."
Yeah.
So I heard about that one. I thought it was pretty funny afterwards, about a week later, but at the time I was pretty rattled.
Yeah.
So I had to do my reset, and then I was good to go again.
Yeah. And I think being able to, I mean, we're all you play the game to win, and everybody wants to be competitive. But I think being able to, in a sense, look back and laugh on things really just helps with the mental part of the game. And, you want to take it seriously in the moment, and you want to win, of course, but you also, this isn't a life or death situation, right? Like everything's kind of a learning opportunity. And I think being able to look back and laugh on mistakes that you make, or at the very least learn from mistakes that you make, is just a huge part of not only growing as an athlete, but growing as a person.
I completely agree. I mean, at the end of the day, you are playing a game. Mm-hmm. So you do have to have a good outlook with it. It was funny. I remember Ray Ferraro, I heard he was on, I think it was the Full 60. He was talking about his experiences and when he went to Atlanta. And how he's supposed to be the big guy there. And he was like, if I could write a story about that team, an autobiography, I'd call it, "If you didn't laugh, you'd want to cry." And so that was, I always found that was really funny, because that's sort of just the mindset you have to have sometimes, whether you're going through a struggle with a season or personally. Like if you laugh about it, it's going to make it better, even if like you just kind of want to get mad at the world for it.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but Ray Ferraro is probably my favorite guy that sits between the benches for a hockey broadcast. I love listening to his takes on the game, and especially when he goes on overdrive around 5 o'clock every day. I just something about Ray. A lot of my buddies don't like him, but I think he's got some good insight, and just the way that he kind of his way about talking about things just always cracks me up. So I like Ray Ferraro.
Oh, I completely agree. I think he's really good at what he does, and just he brings almost like a level of empathy to it, and he has like a bit of self-deprecating humor as well. So it's kind of nice to see a guy who's pretty real about who he was and what's going on in the league, and he's still pretty up with the game. So
yeah, he gets it. Yeah,
it's nice. Yeah,
yeah.
Exactly.
Anyways, Tanner, I got a jet right now, but thanks a bunch for taking time to come on this morning, and best of luck on your game later on this morning.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate that.
Thanks, guys, again for checking out this episode. If you enjoyed any part of it, please share it with your friends and family, and I'll speak to you next time.